How's everyone doing? I'm Chris Lopez, your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms, and welcome to another episode of Union or Bust. And, when you mix high-octane energy drinks and organizing, you do get Organizing Monster.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a special episode for us where we'll be covering Encore Global. But here we brought on some special guests, and I want to first introduce Rudy Lambaria. Rudy Lambaria works with us. He's a field rep. He worked for Encore. Then when we organized and we got a contract, we brought him in to represent the Encore unit. So, Rudy, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. It's a great day. The podcast, is doing really well. I'm glad to be a part of it, and you're bringing us on. So thank you for that.
Well, we are the hottest labor podcast in San Diego.
Definitely. That's a true statement. I agree with that 100%.
So who do we got here, Rudy? We got some of your comrades here from the Encore
So we
unit.
have Mr. Jordan Sullivan right here, and we have Julian Wilson.
Howdy.
What was I supposed to say? Hi.
I like that. I like howdy. Yeah, so let's just dive into it real quick. Most people probably don't know who or what 122 is, what we do. What is a stagehand? So what's a stagehand?
A stagehand, someone behind the scenes at the concert, at the theaters, at the trade shows, corporate AV, audiovisual. So we're the hands that do the work. You see the shows pop up? Well, they didn't get there miraculously. We build them, we tear them down, we service the clients, and then we go home.
I was watching the Super Bowl the other day, and we kind of take it for granted sometimes. All we see the stars going on there, but you guys do a lot of work behind the scenes that no one ever gets to see.
Yeah, that's true. Production, we're the ones, miking up the keynote speakers, setting up the microphones at the Oscars. We do it all. And now we're in the hotels here in San Diego, miking up CEOs, doing the lights, building the projector screens and running the power. We do it all. It's a really complex job.
Operating the shows as well.
Yep.
What kind of shows?
Oh, I said we're operating the shows as well. So like running the sound, running the video, operating lights, all that kind of stuff.
What do you do, Julian?
Well, I'm generally doing audio board operations, setting, kind of running and organizing the labor at my hotel, just so that we have everyone on the same page.
Right. Which hotel is that?
That's the Westin Bayview.
Nice. How long have you been there?
About a year now, as long as Encore has had a contract with that hotel.
Nice.
Now, you recently organized, right?
We did. I unfortunately missed the initial organization, but I believe Jordan was there for most of it.
A lot of that happened behind the scenes. I was barely involved with the initial organization, but I'm here for the new contract, all in. But there's a lot that happened in between then and today, and it wasn't until I started going to these mandatory trainings, which is basically just union busting. Oh, here's here's what everybody lost when they got organized. Not ever showing, of course, what happened for the employees, only what happened for the company. So I got managers coming in on video chats like, "Oh, nothing's ever changed for us. There's no reason for you to organize." Things like that. A lot of
Classic.
A lot of union busting. A lot of you don't need to union and all that sort of stuff. So that's really my only experience in terms of organizing the previous time, because it was, Rudy and some of my other colleagues. So I reaped the benefits, but I wasn't really part of the movement at that time.
Now, who owns Encore?
Well, right now it's owned by Blackstone. They're, a huge conglomerate. They own pretty much everybody.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. It started back when I started. I was working for a company called Presentation Services, and at that time, they were a big company. They started buying up other AV companies. So they bought up. At the time, there was a company called AVHQ. The big merger at that time was AVHQ and PSAV, so they became Audiovisual Services Corporation. And so then they started buying all the other competition. They started buying Swank. Now they bought Encore. So they're going around there. Basically, that's what they do at this point is they buy the competition, and they kind of turn themselves into a monopoly at some point.
Now, how big is Encore?
Who knows?
I would say like they're about over 60% of the audiovisual market in the world.
So they're kind of like the Walmart of
I'd say they're more like the McDonald's of AV.
McDonald's?
Especially especially when you get into things like sales and putting orders together. There's from the perspective of a technician, there's not a whole lot of like, well, this doesn't make sense is what we look at. It's like our salespeople, rather than actually make a sale and see what the customers need, they just take their order down. Oh, this is what, okay. And then we come in and we go, well, this doesn't make sense because, a lot of times it just seems like management does whatever they want and they don't really consider how the show actually needs to get done.
Right.
So that's a huge problem.
Right. So I want to touch up on when you kind of brought up the organizing drive, the first one. Many people don't go through an organizing drives in their lives. Only 10% of Americans workers are in the union. And less than that go actually through an organizing drive. Organizing is very rare. Maybe now it's not as rare as it was 5 years ago, but because of all the organizing that's been going on across the country with UAW, the Teamsters, the flight attendants, everybody's organizing right now. But the first time with Encore, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's draw some like historical context to what is Encore, where they come from. You mentioned Swank, PSAV,
Yes, sir.
but I believe there was a merger between PSAV and Encore. You guys initially worked for PSAV.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so Encore used to be owned by Freeman. So Freeman,
Okay.
they're a big AV company. They do a lot of corporate stuff. They've got all kinds of divisions. They've got trade show divisions. They do exhibits, booths, all sorts of stuff. But they also have an AV division. Encore was their in-house division. So PSAV naturally bought them up to get their share of that stake. And when you're saying where is Encore? Where are they located? If you name the hotel in America, chances are it's going to be an Encore property.
Wow.
Their market share it's pretty huge. So at some point they bought up that competition. Encore Freeman was their competition, so naturally they're going to buy them out. So then at that point, this is right around the time that we were organizing,
Right.
the summer of around 2021. They took that name naturally because over the years PSAV has kind of gotten a reputation of being ruthless, just not a very good company to have to work for. I would hear people hate PSAV. PSAV is a monopoly, like all this sort of stuff. So naturally, if PSAV is going to buy their competition, they're going to take their competition's name. So now, newer companies, newer clients, they may not know that it's the same company, and it's a good way for them to kind of dig in there and do the same stuff, but under a different guise.
Right. Yeah. Go for it, Julian.
Yeah, so Encore is actually has an effort right now to remove PSAV from all of their gear to further distance themselves from that name.
Now, just because I'm not a stagehand or anything, but Blackstone owns everything.
Seemingly.
Right? Seemingly.
They own so much stuff. Yeah.
So-
they're basically
Property.
just they're an investment company, I think. So
Like
they
a-
just buy companies and sell companies.
Is it so they own
Buy 'em
real
and strip 'em.
estate too?
Yeah.
Also, right?
Yep.
Because I remember
of
you talking about an
rentals.
article last year where they were buying up San Diego homes and jacking up the rents. So
Well, they also own some of the properties that Encore AV operates in, right? Some of the hotels,
Yeah, like the Hotel Del.
like the Hotel Del, for example. So not only do they
The
own
Westin as well.
the AV company, but they own the hotel that the AV company operates in.
Yep.
But Rudy, let's bring you in real quick. The first organizing drive, why did it happen? This was the second city in the U.S. to get a contract. Why did you all decide to organize back in, let's say 2019? That's when I took part in it.
First, I would speak on like what my personal reason was.
Yeah. You.
And I was working at the Sheraton San Diego Hotel and Marina right by the airport. So first off, that location is very iconic. That's where they had IBM come and do their first conventions. Bill Gates, people like that, would come to the Sheraton, and they wanted to come to San Diego to do their events, right? So, the tourism market, was born, in San Diego, hotels, conventions, right? And so for me working there, there's a lot of pride, right? There's a lot of pride working at that location. being the audio-visual group, servicing these big groups like IBM, like, that's a big name. And, so you go into a place that you do a killer job all the time. You set up everything perfectly, and you're working really hard, right? You're working at a high level professional job, right? And it's like, whoa, I want to stay here. I want to be here long term, but at the wages that we were hired on, it's not there. It wasn't feasible, right? With the cost of living here, and it was just, I wanted to be there, and the company, first of all, they were an at will, right? So if they wanted to terminate you or get rid of you, you're out, right? Yeah. So there's two big things. So preserving our position at that location long term, like a career, not just some random job, and then getting paid a decent wage, a fair wage, and we weren't getting that. But yet we're doing this work that we take a lot of pride in, you know what I mean? So for me, I was like, those are the two main things. I wanted to be there until I retire, and I wanted to make more money to support my family.
Right.
Bottom line.
So, like making this job into a career, that was your goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what it wasn't that. It wasn't a career before we organized, or
it's what they like to make it appear, right, on paper, and they tell you, this is a great place to work, but it's a great place to work, but for how long?
Well, people are having trouble paying their rent, paying their bills. Great place to work should be a living wage.
Yeah, and you coming in, like I got a bachelor's degree in audio production, right? And they hired me at 14, right? And I just needed a job.
When
I
was
wanted
that?
to come in. This was in 2015.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm doing floor work, I'm doing this, but since I had those skills, I was operating, in the first few months of working there, right? And I did that for like 2 years before I knew that, other operators and other people were making at least $15 more than me for doing the same thing.
$15 more per hour.
Per hour.
Wow.
So
What other operators? What do you mean?
like freelancers that they would bring in.
What's a freelancer?
It's somebody that
Those of us that don't know.
So a
the
freelancer
industry.
is somebody that the company subcontracts to do a job that they could have had one of us do, but they come in just for maybe a 3-day show call, and they get the job done, and then
PSAV at the time was bringing in freelancers.
Yeah, occasionally. Yep, they could do it. They could do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They could afford to pay the freelancers, but they're not paying you the same rate.
Exactly. And that's how, apart from freelancers, they would bring in the union. They would bring in IATSE to come in on and do the jobs as well. And that's how I was introduced to the union.
And real quick, when you mean that, we have a couple contracts with Encore. We have the overhire agreement, which is the one that you're talking about. We've had that for a while. And that's when Encore has jobs. And then if they need extra labor, they call the hall, 122, and we'd send extra labor, basically. That's the overhire agreement that you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, cool. But then the in-house agreement is the one that you all work under.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And when we organized the first time, I know Jordan, you were there. You were there during the whole process, and I know we started organizing in 2019. From what I know, because I came into the union in 2019 here as the organizer, this was a third attempt at trying to organize PSAV at the time, and there was momentum back then, but it just didn't really.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the other attempts.
Oh wow.
Like I said, a lot of that was done behind the scenes. Like I wasn't involved in any of that, and actually, I spent a good amount of time as management. Like Rudy's saying, they try to make you feel like it's a career, and really it's not. They tell you it's a career, but they treat you like it's a job. Like he's saying, a working wage, a good wage, like that's not really a thing. Working conditions, hours. It's basically like, if you really want to make some money, you got to take these jobs, you got to take these overtime positions, work as many days and hours as you can just to make a good amount. The way it was structured when I was coming up was you work your way up into a management position, and that's what you do. Like they have kind of made a path where you can make some career choices as an operator, as a specialist, but the way it used to be was you are a tech or you are management. So that was the path I took for a while. So a lot of that organizing was done or attempting while I was in management. So of course, I'm not going to be involved in anything like that.
Right.
I realized that management wasn't for me, so I took a step down, and really that's probably one of the best decisions I've made career-wise was taking a step down and being a technician. It's a much better quality of life, except for pay, obviously.
Now, you've been around a little while. I mean, I'm looking at I know how much gray hair I have, but you've been around a little while.
A lot less gray hair, yeah. I
That's
started
all from Encore.
Is that for management?
I actually, some of it is. Some of it's children. I actually started going gray when I was 19, but that's sort of relevant. I started with the company in August of 2005, so
Wow.
it's going to be 19 years this summer. So I've been around for a bit, and like I said, I started at the height as a regular technician, worked my way up, became a supervisor, became management. I bounced around management, a couple of hotels, wound up at the convention center, and during my time at the convention center was kind of where I started to realize, you know what, management just isn't for me.
Speaking of the convention center, so PSAV used to be in the convention center,
Yeah, so we were in-house from 13 to 18.
2013 and 2018.
In 18, we went in for contract negotiations. The convention center selected PSAV as their to continue a contract. During those negotiations, they came forward, said, because of the Port Authority, this is a union hotel, or not hotel, union building. We want everybody to be union. We know that you're not a union represented company, but we want you to sign what they called a neutrality agreement. Neutrality agreement basically is like we agree that if the union comes in and wants to talk to our employees, and jumping back a little bit, most of the labor that we used there was IATSE 122.
Right.
It was union. And the agreement that we had was, unless you were using your full-time employees, everybody you brought in was a union. Well, I don't want to speak ill of some of our local PSAV people, but really I was getting much better work just using straight IATSE. We get work done more efficiently, more quickly, higher quality people just going through the hall. So our techs are more like a lead tech. So they would, we'd plan it out. They'd take the crew. We'd meet with the crew. We'd go through, how the event's going to go. And then our techs would just take it with the hall and run. So at that point, it wasn't, why shouldn't our guys be union, right?
Right.
It wasn't my decision to make, so I couldn't really tell them. But when the convention center came in, they wanted to sign this neutrality agreement. Our company, in the middle of negotiations, said, no, we're not going to do that. What a neutrality agreement would have been was if the union comes in, they want to talk to our employees about organizing. Us as the employer could not say yes or no either way. We had to say, we couldn't tell you if we thought it was good, if we thought it was bad.
It's up to the employees.
It's up to the employees.
Yeah.
So what's the big deal of being neutral in that agreement? Well, our company, because they didn't want to have any say with the union, they said nope, and they pulled out of contract negotiations. So we were out,
So you guys were out of the convention
we
center.
were out of the convention center in April of 18.
You lost work just
how did
because the
the-
company didn't want an opinion?
Well, so
Like-
so the company that came in, it's a company called On Services. Well, it's On Site. It's On Services. It's owned by another company called GES. They're similar to Freeman. They do exhibits, AV, that sort of stuff. So now it's a company called On Site. So what On Site did was they hired my technicians as their technicians. So they all stayed on to work there.
Wow.
It was at that point where good old PSAV, they always guaranteed that they would find you a place to work. Several months into this transition, I hadn't heard a thing. And so I called up my RVP and I said, you know what? I'm over being management anyway. I'd rather just go back to being a technician. And of course, he's trying to talk me out of that as well. Like, oh, you're going to be hourly, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, from my point of view, I was working nearly every day, 12 hours a day because I had no technicians, you know. Our general manager had been ousted. So basically it was just me and like one salesperson running the entire hotel or the entire building. And for some of you who don't know, I can't do that kind of math off the top of my head, but it's the building itself is about a half a mile from side to side, plus the exhibit hall. There's two large ballrooms, all the meeting space. It's a big place for one person. So at that point, I'm like, why would I want to continue to do this?
Right.
So I told my RVP, like, I'd rather be a technician. So he's trying to talk me out, and I said, so I'll be paying hourly. I'm going to be getting overtime. So where's the downside of that?
Yeah, so On Services came in. They signed a neutrality agreement
Yeah.
with the convention center because they said, yeah, sure, we'll fucking
Yeah.
sign a neutrality agreement. And PSAV walked away. They're like, nah, we're not going to sign the neutrality
Yep.
agreement. So they bounced, and then that's what he's talking about,
So
getting another
how's
job.
that working for PSAV now?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm wondering how your like fellow technicians, coworkers reacted to that.
To the neutrality agreement?
Yeah, do you think that was like a catalyst for like organizing down the road?
Good question.
That I can't answer to because I'd never heard anything from the other technicians, but it's possible. I know that once the other guys joined up with On Services, they organized right away because why not?
We got a contract pretty
Yeah.
quick. Yeah. And it was a pretty good contract.
And they're getting paid what they should be getting paid.
Right.
Okay.
Nice. Then from there, I'm just backtracking just so we can get context of Encore, PSAV, the union. So then a few years later, On Services went in, they became union. PSAV was in the hotels only. And then after that, 2019, 2020, we started organizing again. And then that's where Rudy came in the picture. And then we filed. Remember, we filed for a union election. It was like we decided to file March 1st. I remember that because that was my mom's birthday. And we were out, it was a Sunday, and we were out eating lunch for her birthday. But we had set our last organizing committee meeting that day to make the decision if we're going to file or not the following day, which would have been March 2nd, Monday. And yeah, we met up and everybody agreed, and then we just filed the following day. We're like, okay, this is awesome. Do you remember how you felt that day when you all decided to file together as an organizing committee? Like, okay, now all the hard work is right here, got bottled up, and then now the decision to really hit the floor running. How did it feel?
It felt like an astronaut, like like Buzz Aldrin, one small step.
That was Neil.
Oh. Obviously, I don't know my history.
Toy Story?
But
It was an astronaut.
Thanks for correcting me
you're
on that. No, but I felt like that. I felt like we're taking a small step, but in the future though it was gonna pan out for us, right? Like I was just like, whoa, we're doing something historic, right?
Yeah.
We're breaking new ground, right? Like, and because really from 2017, I would say, until that moment, there was a grassroots movement in the company, and and me working as a specialist, I was at every property. I got to know people, and my big thing, I lived out these core values that Encore had, and it was value people. So for me, like, I always just wanted to go in there and have fun doing my job and get to know people. And, it wasn't just it just wasn't grunt work. It was a way for me to hang out with my buds, hang out with other stagehands and, from the overhire that were helping all the in-house crew. And it was just like, we took pride in our work, right? And it was just like, hey, we're going to get it done, flawless performance, that was Encore's thing. And I really lived and died by that because I was like, dude, we're the best. Like people in our industry, people in IATSE, I realized like I want to have that standard, that high quality, being the best, right? Love what you do. This was it for me. We knew that. A lot of guys in the grassroots movement knew this was it for them, right? But Encore, that's not what they do. They have this turn and burn philosophy, right?
Yeah.
So for us, we needed to change that, right? So in those 2 years, everyone's always talking like, hey, when we get that opportunity, and the guys from the hall would say, hey, are you represented? Asking these small questions, but those questions went a long way, right? And then, we got guys from the Marriott downtown coming to the Sheraton, and we were just all linked because everybody, get transferred out to work different shows. So I mean, all that was just happening organically, right? And then it took like, you know, what happened at the convention center, you know, Encore just not willing to, you know, do the right thing, right? Because I think that would have been the right thing to
That's
do.
also one of their core values is do the right thing along with value people. And like you say, you work at other hotels, and that was kind of their mentality was like, you work here, your home location. So right now I'm steward at the Marriott. So I'm the shop steward at the Marriott, and that's my home property. But when I started at the Hyatt, the mentality was this is your home property, but you work everywhere. So you name the hotel in San Diego, chances are I've worked there at least one shift, because that's their mentality is rather than treating us like employees, they treat us like gear. And that was one of the biggest things for me was I'm tired of being treated like a piece of gear. Like there's an open shift, you're going to work there today because you're on the shelf, you're available. And you know, myself, other employees, that's the way we feel is we're people. We're not gear. We're not just here to serve you. It's our livelihood, it's our jobs, but it's not just a job. It's what we do. But like you're saying, value people, it's not really valuing us. If it's like, oh, you're at the Sheraton tomorrow, oh, and then you're at La Costa, and you spend more of your time figuring out where you're going to work, how to get there, than you do actually enjoying what you're doing sometimes.
Right. Okay. So, and then we filed, and then you explained how it felt. But Jordan, when you heard that we filed, how did you feel? Since I mean, you know what I mean. Like you weren't part of like.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like I've been working for so long.
Yeah.
Even I mean I've been working with people from the hall, and so like a lot of people know me already. So a lot of times I've even got people like, hey, when are you going to join up? When are you going to come with us? Like, and I was always in a spot where it's like, you know, I'm getting work. I'm doing okay, especially as management, where it's like, it would be kind of weird for me to be manager for this company and
working
union.
at the hall.
So at the time I was like, oh, you know, and I could have made that jump, but then, you know, it'd be like starting back at the beginning. That's great. I could work for the hall and get work, but then I have to build my reputation back up. So this is funny because right about the time that we lost work.
Right.
We went furlough was right about the time that the organizing came about.
Right.
So at that time, it was like, oh, great. Now I have an in. I can get into the union and still have that reputation and still be well known. So it was, you know, basically the in I was looking for, and it was pretty much the perfect time at that point. So,
Yeah.
you know, as soon as then they started bringing us into the, like I said, the union busting trainings. I use training with quotation marks because it was no way training. It was, you know, they say we just want to educate you, but it was classic union busting.
We call them captive audience meetings.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Because they pay you, you're on the clock, so you have to.
Yep.
You have to participate in them. So just for the sake of the timeline, so we filed, and which was in March, and then 2020, and then that's what happened, the pandemic right after that. So it was crazy how we were all excited that one Sunday. We're like, we're going to file, we're going to kill it, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. And then like just a couple weeks later, it's like, oh, California shuts down.
Yep. And I mean, because corporate meetings and events aren't exactly a necessary business, we were one of the first ones to go lose our jobs. So, you know, I saw it coming. So I had already filed for unemployment knowing like, you know, this is going to happen. So right at that time was right when it happened. So then it's like, not only are they having these captive audience meetings, but that was like the only hourly pay we were getting at that point.
Right.
So it was actually one of those where one of the people at our location, Tio at Figueroa, was like, hey, you want to sign an organizing card? Heck yeah, I'll do it right now. Right. So, and then we get back to the whole valuing people part of the Encore PSAV company values, they call it. And, you know, there was a talk when companies go to the NLRB or the National Labor Relations Board, for those of us who don't know, when we filed for that, it was, you know, when you vote for a union, you go to a neutral location, somewhere that's not a union place, somewhere that's not a, you know, company-owned place, so that there's no kind of electioneering, like trying to take people and sway them. And at that point, because it was a pandemic, us workers are like, I don't want to have to go somewhere, put myself at risk. I want to vote, but I want to be safe about it. Our company was like, no, well, we'll do it at our local branch office,
Yeah, I remember
which is
that.
a very hostile place to come vote. So it was a big push for us to be able to say, no, we want to vote by mail. And so there was a fight with that just to be able to vote by mail.
Yeah.
So this is
Wow.
during
Yes, sir.
COVID.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
people are dying and risking their, they still want you to go in person.
Correct.
And risk your life.
I remember
It's
we had
crazy.
when we were going back and forth when we filed, we had to argue that.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the biggest things was like, not only are you trying to dissuade us from doing this, now you want us to put ourselves and our families and friends at risk by going out in public to some company-owned location
to vote.
to vote on something. So once that, I mean, I was pretty much convinced anyway, but that was definitely the tipping point. Was like, you don't care about us at all.
Right.
You don't care if we
starve or die.
if we starve or die or show up or what. Yeah.
Well,
Just order some new gear.
And on top of that, they paid this company, busting firm, over $450,000 to union bust us,
Union
to do
bust,
these
yeah.
captive audiences. And if they broke down that up to individuals, like how many employees? I think it was like a little over 200 employees.
Yeah.
I think we all got like maybe $3,000
Yeah.
each, right? Like they didn't even make any attempt to like, just try to buy us out. You know what I mean? Like instead of doing that, because I thought that was gonna happen. I was really, a lot of us were right on it. I was like, yeah, we're gonna get a check, but like they probably knew we were gonna be union at that point.
Right.
It's not like Blackstone's hurting for money.
Correct.
Oh no.
No,
I
they're not
I
hurting at all.
Googled them and I go, well, they own
yeah.
residential real, and I'm like, what don't they own?
They own
Yeah.
everything.
And I
they
mean,
own some
just-
pension
I
funds.
mean,
And this
even-
is how they do it. They just siphon the
Yep.
the value from you.
And not only that, but just from Encore as a company, as a downtime one day, I'm looking at what we charge for gear and stuff, and like even now our hourly wage is not what it should be. We have people making like $17 an hour when fast food workers in 2 months are going to be getting $20 an hour, and we have people who are going to be making less than fast food workers.
Oh, shout out to the fast food union.
Yes.
Yeah, good on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like. Speaking of that, so now we're here now. We're here now. We've had the contract for 2 years. When does the contract expire?
I think it's a year from Sunday, the 18th of February.
So February
Next year.
Next year.
25.
2025. And how is the vibe going out there in the field? Like, is people amped up or people ready to take it on? Because it's going to be a fight. Rudy, you know that the first contract was like pulling teeth. The first contract for any union, for any industry, it's always the hardest to get. Because you argue over the stupidest little things like, what does a full-time mean? What does part-time mean? You argue over language over that. So now that we got that out of the way, now it's time to actually fight for something better. But what's the vibe out there in the field?
I would say it's kind of mixed. I've got people that are let's do it, ready to go. Like we'll strike if we need to. Like we want to get what we're due. Like we're talking about what we want the language to be, how we want our terms to be. A lot of people are really excited. Like they're like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. And some people are like, well, is anything going to be really different at all? Like what's the point in all this? Which I have to keep telling everybody, give us a year. In a year, we'll be able to get you most of what you want. If not all of it, but like. Now's the time to start doing this. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got people that are ready and willing, and I've got people who are like, I think I'm just going to quit.
I talk to new members a lot, and a contract is property. You own it.
Yes.
And it cannot be taken away from you without just cause. And I think like Blackstone and other companies, they don't want you to own anything. They don't want you to have anything. They want to dictate your wages, your benefits, and your working conditions.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And even where you live.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
They
even
own
where you
property,
live.
they own homes.
I didn't even think about that. I
If
was
they had their way, we wouldn't even be full-time employees with benefits.
No. And
No.
I mean, if they had their way, we would definitely not be making even what we're making now.
Yeah.
And they can afford it. I was looking at some just like pieces of gear, how much they charge. The company charges $3,700 per day for a 90-inch monitor, and we've got people that are only making $17 an hour. I think they can afford a few extra dollars per hour for those kind of prices.
It's amazing how much money they have when they want to get rid of they want to do union busting or
Oh, yeah.
they want to do this. All the money's out there. They need to hire
It's
these
there.
anti-union. But when it comes to taking care of their own employees,
I think you bring up a good point, Chris, when you say that Blackstone or Encore or whatever, they don't want you to own anything, and the contract is a piece of property. They don't want you to own that. And I've always said in the beginning, the first time we organized, is that it's not about the money. Because money, they have billions of, right? Blackstone, they can afford anything. They can afford the overhire. Overhire, you all know our rates are better than for the in-house. So if they can afford our rates, they can afford the in-house. But but I always say that it's always about the power dynamic.
Definitely.
Because if you don't have a union contract, if you're just an individual, you're at will, like Rudy said earlier, you're at will. They can fire your ass for whatever they want to fire you for. But once you have a union contract and you're bounded together, now that's what gives you power, is bounding together with your coworkers and fighting for wages, benefits, and working conditions. Sure, the first contract wasn't the greatest. We organized through a pandemic, won an election through a pandemic, negotiated most of the contract during the pandemic. The best leverage that workers have is withholding labor. You can't withhold labor if there is no labor, if we're shut down. So, but yeah, it's the power. That's why they were fighting tooth and nail to even prevent you all from having a contract to begin with. They don't care what the rates were, is you guys having a contract to begin with.
And that's that leads me to another thought that I have a lot, is when people say like, oh, our contract sucks, they're not even doing anything, like what the union, they went through all this and now we're paying our dues and all that. So I have to remind them, like, our dues are going to something. They're going for, fighting for this. They're going to go to, if we have to go on strike, they're going for paying for all these things to help us. And when you look at the contract, yes, it's not the best contract, but we can't negotiate better terms if we have no terms. So you have to take that into consideration, is what I tell a lot of our people when they're looking at the contract. And I encourage everybody who doesn't have access to see it, understand it, because that is our lifeline to working better. And yes, the terms aren't the best, but it's better than what we could have. Seattle went for years without a contract. So yeah, it's not the best, but we can't negotiate off of nothing. So that's what we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I tell, I'm a union representative. I know Juan's an organizer, but, I tell people, if like you work somewhere and you don't have a contract, you don't have those property rights, one person walking into the office saying, hey, I need a raise. Well, Blackstone's going to be like, hey, no. But when 35,000 people walk in the office and say, give me a raise or we're going to walk outside, now that's a different conversation. And I think that's the power of a union.
Yep.
Yeah. Julian, bringing you in a little bit. So you weren't here for the first organizing drive, but you're here now. You've been here for, you said, almost 2 years? Since we bounced back from the pandemic then.
This is like the start of my third year, I guess.
Okay, cool. And how do you feel, or for people that weren't part of the original drive, because I think most of the unit is not there from the original drive.
Yeah, I think they're mostly gone. I'm super excited about it. I'm trying to bring as much energy as I can to other properties when I visit them. I try to talk to everybody, get some ideas for like what they would think would improve the contract. And I think that's opened up a lot of good conversations, because a lot of people don't know what the union is doing for them, or like that things can actually get better and that we do have a say in what we're doing.
I always tell the story. My daughter used to work at KFC, and she was working on I think it was the 4th of July. I go, hey, what are you getting? She's all, nothing. I'm already, aren't you getting time and a half or something?
What?
She's all, no. Well, they're not union at KFC. Okay.
That's
crazy. You own, when you have things in your contract, the company has to pay you, and I always, I probably going to talk a little too much here, but anytime I talk to new members, you see my hair, but when I talk to new members, I always tell them a story. When I was a young dad, I took my daughters to the zoo and we went to go see the cheetah cage. It's a big cage, they have trees in there and everything, but I'll never forget, there was a golden retriever, a dog, inside that cage with the cheetah. And it was barking at that cheetah, going, rah, real loud. And the cheetah was all scared. And I'm thinking to myself, that cheetah could rip that dog's face off. That's all I was thinking. So I asked the zoo guy, I go, hey, what's going on? He's all, the cheetah thinks the dog is dominant. because the cheetah was born in captivity. So I always tell my new members, remember who you are. You're part of the union. You're part of the labor movement. We don't cut side deals. We work together to get the best contracts possible. And that's what it is, solidarity, sticking together.
Yeah, and that's for people that... The thing is, not every union is perfect. Not every contract is perfect. But the only way we can make it better is by sticking together and fighting for something that we believe in. You see what's going on across the country, all these organizing drives, all these strikes that have been going on. UAW was like the most recent successful strike. Those guys got like 30% pay increases and back pay and pension. They stopped their pensions, like how much raises they were going to give their pensions. They got that back paid, and now they're getting all kinds of wins out of this last contract that they just negotiated last year. They only were able to do that because the workers got together and did something about it. They didn't get that from GM or Ford just because they're good companies. They got it because they fought for it. So for people that complain all the time, but they're not really involved, it's like, dude, get involved. That's how we win something. That's how they won. That's how we're going to win. Now, I can't tell you if we're going to win it, but that's the only chance we have. If you don't fight for nothing, then you're guaranteed not to win anything. That's just the way it goes. So I appreciate you all coming on and talking about Encore and being involved. This year, definitely, we are ramping up Encore. We're putting our money where our mouth is. When we first signed the first deal, we said it like, hey, we need to continue to invest and reinvest in Encore because you all are our biggest unit in this union. So you guys mean a lot to us. You guys mean a lot to IATSE as a whole, not just here in San Diego, but there's an effort nationwide to organize Encore.
Well, I mean, after us in Philly,
Right.
the dominoes are starting to fall. There's other locations that are voting or have gotten contracts.
Right.
Seattle's finally gotten their own contract,
Yep.
but it's only going to grow from here. And this is the way to show, like, hey, even if you don't get the best contract, like, was it Monterey? They just got a contract.
Monterey Bay.
It's similar to what we have. So if they see what we do when they renegotiate in 3 years or whatever the length of the term is for them, then they're going to see, like, hey, we can get better terms also. So it's just going to keep going down the line, and people are going to see what happens. And I think we're kind of in a unique position here in San Diego to kind of show that, you know, just once we go, it just keeps following. So we can show what we can do as a local, but also as an international.
Right.
And I tell people, it's not just about one union. It's about Unite here. It's about IATSE. It's about UFCW. It's about the Teamsters. It's about the AFL-CIO. It's about everyone coming together because, you know, that's what is going on right now. This labor movement, I think, was it 88% of people born after 1995 support labor unions. It's very, very high. I mean, and as long as we remember who we are.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was born in the 80s, so growing up primarily in the 90s, because I don't remember much of the 80s because I was so little, but, like, growing up, like, unions were kind of like, ooh, union equals bad, like, hearing people talk, you know, unions, they just want the power and they want that, but like you said, now we're realizing that unions are to help people. It's not just about political power, it's about, you know, the power of people, the power of workers. And I think people are finally starting to realize that.
I agree.
Post-pandemic, right?
Rudy, yeah. And Rudy sat in those negotiating sessions with the bosses. So you tell everybody who's trying to negotiate the wages up and who's trying to negotiate the wages down. It's that simple. It's not like we're trying. If anything, these corporations, and we talked about monopoly, like how PSAV, Swank, and now Encore, how they just keep buying out smaller companies to monopolize the game. And they don't monopolize the game to better the wages and working conditions. They monopolize it to bring wages down, to be the Walmart, the McDonald's of the industry. But when we try to organize and we try to build union power, is to bring wages up. So that's why this unit is also so important to us, is because if we continue to lift up all our contracts, it's only going to better our other contracts at the Old Glow, the Playhouse, the Freeman contract, our overhire contract, etc. So Rudy, what do you feel? What is your role? What's going on in this one? Like, since you were here for both. You're here for the first organizing drive, and now you're being a part of the second organizing drive through a little bit different perspective. You're in the hall now. But what do you think is going on, or what are you excited
first we had to risk our jobs, right? We put a lot of it on the line, and majority of our units not there anymore. That was pre-pandemic, but now post-pandemic, it's just like a bigger picture. It's a bigger scope. You see this more union. It's a growth of union support, and because there is a corporate takeover. I think everyone realized, like, crap, our jobs, might not always be there. We're not secure. People just have gone through a lot, collectively, with all the other unions, and it's just like this buzz, and so I kind of got off topic there, but I was just putting it all in perspective, because there is a lot going on, and we have to think outside the box, doing stuff like what we're doing here with Juan, doing everything we can, learning from our past mistakes. What can we done better, right? One thing we had working against us was the pandemic, right? We lost half of our workforce, and that meant half of our supporters that were all pro-union, and we didn't have, when we took our actions, we didn't have that support, right? We didn't have the big, picket lines or leaflet or caravans, things we were doing. There wasn't enough people there to show up. Now it's kind of like where jobs are protected. They can't, just terminate us for any reason. So we have that going for us. And then we have the numbers that are building up. And what Encore doesn't realize is that the youngsters that they're hiring are pro-union. They come in like, oh, I can't wait to sign up. I can't wait to meet you. You know what I mean? And, so, it's working against them, in the long run. Until they get with us and negotiate better wages and work on that retention, work on keeping the employees they have, and everybody there to understand, like, hey, this is our own, this is ours to own it, right? Like property. Mm-hmm. Like, this is we got to make sure we take care of the upkeep, where we're getting together and because we need to make those big changes, right? And it takes everybody to get together and do it. I feel like we made a lot of growth in this past year, with our Steward system and with just people that are just getting in and educating themselves, because if you've never been a part of a union, you don't know. Mm-hmm. You don't know what it is. So getting to your field rep, coming to our meetings, getting to know our stewards, and then for us now it's time to hold each other accountable. It's kind of like, hey, I'm a steward, but we need more stewards. You know what I mean? We gotta build it ourselves, because this fight, it just isn't with 122. It's become an international fight, right? And we're ground zero, right? We're ground zero in this battle. Everyone else is watching us do it. What is 122 going to do, right? What are we going to do? Because if they can take us out, if they can cut the head off the snake, then they've won the battle right there. Because there is actively a campaign that Encore is putting together, globally to combat unionism, right? And because there's such an uprising, right?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had talked to somebody who was working for another company as freelance, and he's with Encore in the Orlando area, and I was telling him about our union and how we're renegotiating all this stuff, and they're not union in Florida, and what they put together recently is something like what we have in our contract is we have a quarterly labor management committee, and we talk to the regional leadership, and we have this back and forth, and they started doing that in Florida as sort of a way of like, see, we want to talk to you and get your perspective. So things that we've done have already corporate wise that they're trying to do to combat that sort of thing is things like that, like, oh, let's have a quarterly meeting with our employees and things like that. So like he's saying, they are actively trying to, I don't want to say bust, but suppress that sort of thing. Like, see, we care.
Well,
Get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Get ahead of it, yeah.
No, well, yeah, I think it's not just Encore, believe me. It's every corporation out there. They're seeing the wave across the country, across trades, that everybody's like a Starbucks, Amazon, they're all organizing. Now, Starbucks, Amazon haven't gotten their first contract yet because, like I said, getting the first contract is the hardest thing, period. But once you get the first one in, it's the foot in the door, and then you start really going at it, because now you're protected. Doing this now, you're out in the public or you're ahead of the contract negotiations, you're protected. They can't do anything to you. Maybe when we're organizing the first time around, you'd think twice of like, well, do I really want to stick my neck out there? We're not even protected. So, but like you said, it is an international fight. It is a national fight. And this affects our international as a whole. It affects Encore as a whole, but it also affects every other industry. It affects USCW, the grocery workers, the Teamsters, the UPS, the Amazons, because when we start winning, then other people, other places want to start seeing that too happen in their workplaces. They're like, oh, they were able to go on strike and they were successful. Why can't we do that? And that's where they want to cut the head off.
Yeah,
right there.
Yeah, I always say in the labor movement, we're a pride alliance, and the pride will eat, but how much is ultimately up to us.
You got to go hunting.
And it's funny to say about KFC workers how they weren't union.
Speaking of food, KFC.
Well, no, because I used to work at Home Depot back in the day, and
same.
like you're saying, like, oh, we're not union, so we don't get things like holiday pay. Home Depot actually was pretty good towards their employees in that sort of way. Like, I made pretty good money for just being someone pushing shopping carts, but there was holiday pay. If you were part time, then you would get, if you worked basically time and a half, you get paid a half a day, whether you worked or not.
That's good.
If you were full time, you got paid a full day, whether you worked or not. So they were actually more willing to work with their employees and show them the value of people. And, they paid well. They got pretty good. Our breaks were, if we didn't take our break, we got in trouble. So like there was never any of like the missing our meal break or any of that sort of thing. Like they were very big on making sure you got what you were owed as an employee. Time off, all that sort of stuff was never a question. Even things like jury duty. If you got called up for jury duty, I think Encore, maybe they pay you for 2 or 3 days. If you get picked, Home Depot as an employer, they'll pay you for whatever trial you're on for the duration. So if you're on a 6-month murder trial, you're getting paid your hourly rate, daily rate until you're back to work. So they're really good about taking care of their employees, which is probably why companies like Home Depot, you don't hear about them wanting to go union because they're a company that actually values their employees. And you see what happens when you have value of employees,
While we're making the Home Depot look pretty good over
How
here.
long ago was that? Because I worked for them
This was
pretty recently,
this,
and it's
this was
not
in
exactly the
2004.
same.
Well, and like I said, things you said you used to work for them. Companies, they have the right to dictate the terms. So, Home Depot in 2004, can change everything. And when you used to work there, and the thing is like it just changes. The company they have that control. You have those rights. I think, and I don't know, but there is a organizing campaign called Home Depot's United, and they're actively trying to organize.
Right. Going back to the corporation, Sarah Nelson, we had her on. Shout out
Sarah Nelson.
She said the best organizers are the company themselves. So Encore was the best organizer.
Yep.
Honestly, when I got hired here at 122 to help organize with Encore, I was just connecting dots. You guys, like you said, we're already laying out the groundwork from the beginning. As soon as I started meeting you guys one by one, people were already like, yeah, this is fuck. Like, we're already talking about it because you guys were already talking to each other and talking to the guys from the hall. So that's because the corporation wasn't that great to its employees.
And it's funny you say that because I had always thought about, how do we organize? I didn't have any idea how to do it. So then, when Rudy and company came in and it's like, cool, someone already did the work for me. I got to figure it out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there you go.
Most people don't know that they can organize.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Like, they don't teach us in high school, hey, this is how you
Oh, of
organize a
course.
company, by the way. No, there's a reason why Amazon, Jeff Bezos, they invest in school boards because that's, they dictate the education, the books and the textbooks and whatnot, what kids learn. So, of course, they're going to not learn about organizing and the labor movement. That's
the only labor movement you really learn about is in the 1920s and the Industrial Revolution and books like The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, things like that. So there really wasn't a whole lot. I mean, I'm remembering 8th grade here, but yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot in terms of like here's what it's like to be in a union. It was just like, oh yeah, unions happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It's suppression. It's suppression, just like like the news, like the farmers in Europe right now, coming together to make a change. I'm just using that as an example because they suppress this information, right? Because they don't want this to happen.
Well, yeah,
You
I mean, that they don't want us to realize our power.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how it works. I mean, last year when freaking the railroad worker, or 2 years ago at this point, a year and a half, when they were about to go on strike, we had the media kind of painting it as, oh, you're gonna get your presents late, and then that's the framing, the narrative that they were holding, because these railway workers, they had a lot of power. They have, because everything that gets, all our goods are transported on these trains. And then even my girlfriend was saying things like that, and she's in labor. She's a union teacher, and she was saying that. And I'm her boyfriend, and so I'm doing a bad job at home. But still, but if they got people believing that and saying those type of things, imagine. It's all by design. It's not an accident. So it's our job to educate ourselves. It's our job to get organized and fight for something. It's not the job of the corporation to do it for us.
How do you go about organizing and doing that first organizing push? What's I know there's something to do with cards, you got to sign cards.
Yeah. So there's a process to organizing. It depends what industry you're in. If you're private, if you're public, those are two different, let's just say, rules that you have to go by. Here in the private sector, you just collect cards. You have to collect 30% of the units to sign cards. So if the unit is 100 people, then you have to collect 30 cards. Those 30 cards can initiate a union election. You turn those 30 cards into the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board. They're the governing body that handles labor, everything. You turn it into them, and then they get in contact with management, and then we go back and forth with the union and management and the NLRB. And then we eventually come to a decision on the union election. But they get an option during that time frame to stay kind of neutral. Most of them don't. As you pointed out, they do union busting. They try to prevent the organizing from happening to begin with. They try to persuade a no vote. But to win a union election, you have to get 50% plus one. So out of 100, you have to get 51 people to vote yes to pass, if not the other way around.
And how well did that no vote go first again? Was it 75, 80%, something like that?
The yes vote
Yes.
was almost 75%.
Nice.
Even after 3 months.
It was a lot of union busting.
Of union busting from March, April, May, June.
Sorry, training.
4 trainings, yeah. 4 months of union busting, $450,000 later. But that's why, because you guys were already in cahoots.
Yeah.
You guys were so passionate about organizing or wanting some change. And now we're here. Now the talk is, okay, let's get the rest of it into the contract. Let's get together. Let's organize. Let's fight for something. Because the rest of the country is already doing it. You guys are already protected. We have things that we didn't have the first time around. Labor. We have work. Now we have work. We have this coalition. We have this podcast. Now everybody's gonna see it. So subscribe. But yeah, no, any last thoughts? That's pretty much it. We're
On
almost at
YouTube, ring the bell.
Smash that like button. There you go. But any other things that you guys want to share or talk about? We usually go for about an hour with these little podcast episodes.
You're kind of putting me on the spot here now.
Putting you on the spot,
Yeah,
Jordan.
I'm not sure what I want to talk about.
You can find me on Twitch,
There you go. What's your handle?
the Raccoon DJ.
I'm not really on social media.
You are now.
I am now.
You can find him on this podcast
Yeah.
right here.
Now, I think this is a good episode to educate, people about who Encore are, what we do, in our line of work, what we've been through, and it's just, understanding what it is first, right? And then getting the crew and everybody else that doesn't know, that kind of knows, but to get involved, right? And this goes out to you out there, all stagehands. Get to know each other, talk, communicate about what kind of working conditions need to be improved. How can we make this happen? And you asked a good question about organizing, that's how it happens. That's all I got.
No, but definitely, I think that's what it's about. It's about us coming together to fight for something.
Yeah.
The Tax, you guys are a family. You guys are a unit. You're the biggest unit for our union. We're all brothers and sisters, we say. So now let's act like it. My job is to help you all have the best contract possible. That's it. But it's your job to fight for it. So, yeah, we're going to be here for you all. We're going to continue doing these episodes of Encore. So if you think of other things, we'll talk about it. This is an ongoing fight. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yep.
unless they all of a sudden come up with a cool contract when we start negotiating.
Well, I don't see them even coming with anything that's. I mean, just from our negotiation committees, or not a negotiation, our
LMCs.
Yeah, we come with lists of topics, right? Of here's all the problems we're having. We've already got a good list going for this one coming up in March. They've only brought one topic once, and that was Article 19, which is union
Access.
Thank you. Basically, like, oh, you're coming in and talking to our employees. So we're union already. So what? That was the only thing they've ever complained about. Everything else is we bring all the topics and they sit on defense.
Well, there you go. So that's what we got to do. We just got to keep fighting for something. You all are doing the right thing by being involved, sticking your necks out. This takes a lot of courage. It does. Most people can't do this, but you guys are doing it. So somebody has to do it, though. Otherwise, then what?
Well, I mean,
You guys are
I
gonna
encourage everybody just to at least say something,
Yeah.
even if it's not in this sort of format, but, get out and talk to people.
Right. That's the only way you're going to win.
And anytime we have people coming to our location, I'm always like, if I haven't met them before, like, hey, what location are you from? Who's your steward? How's it going over there with management? Have you gotten a copy of the contract? I've printed contracts out for, at least a half a dozen people who
that's awesome.
their managers won't even show it to them, and that's wrong.
Right. And that's awesome. Yeah. All right, cool. Any last words?
A rising tide should lift all ships.
There you go.
I think Sarah Nelson said that also on one of our
Man.
podcasts.
Are you
Dan?
Sarah Nelson?
I might be.
You got you.
Sick.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, that was another episode of Union or Bust. Smash that like button, share. We need Patreons, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
So we're broke.
you can actually go on Your Union Brother. If you go to Instagram, on my bio, just click become a supporter of Union or Bust.
Or just go to patreon.com/Union or Bust podcast and become a subscriber. $5. Just give us $5 a month. That's all we ask for.
All right.
Cool. All right, guys.